From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. So this is a very different episode of Ask the Programmer because we are here live at ISE 2025, and I really get the opportunity to speak with my counterpart at Control Concepts, Brittany DiCesare. Welcome, Brittany.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And last time that you and I spoke was at ISE 2024.
Yeah, it seems to be our annual thing.
It is.
So.
It is. And if you want to catch that episode, that's episode 153. And at that time, Brittany shared a lot about the business side of a software company. So you can learn a little bit more about that. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about the technical side of what Control Concepts does. And Control Concepts is a supporter of Ask the Programmer. And we get a chance to share a little bit behind the scenes and also talk a little bit about why we go to ISE and why programmers need to understand the value that manufacturers are trying to bring to them. So let's start off a little bit about the conversations that we're having, because what we're finding is that more manufacturers are trying to make programmers' lives easier, and that's should be music to the ears of our audience.
Yes, absolutely. I think programmers should be jumping for joy with what we've heard here at ISE. So a lot of the manufacturers are now understanding why it is vital to have access to those application markets. So making sure they've got drivers, modules, plugins for all of the various control platforms that exist and that are popular within the market. And they're really understanding the amount of work it takes to take an API from API to actually getting it to control the product in the field, and how much work that involves and the pressure that programmers are under. They're seeing that now. And so they're really ready to invest not only in a solution, but in a high quality solution.
So to talk a little bit about, we've had Will DeWitt from USC on, and he actually spoke with us, and you were there at Infocom many years ago, and that's probably one of our most popular episodes. I believe that's episode 68. And talk a little bit about what an API is, just so that we can enlighten our audience and what that is as compared to a module driver or plugin.
Yeah. So I like to compare an API with module driver and plugin almost like a recipe. So API's got your list of ingredients, and it's got everything you need, but what do you do with it? It's the whole world of things that you could choose to do, but you have to have the experience, the knowledge, and the steps to really make that recipe into something magical, something that works, something that's edible. So API is very much like that list of recipes. Modules, drivers, and plugins, that's the prepared food. It's already made for you, essentially. You've got all of the steps lined out, and you really just got to put it all together.
So that's a great analogy, and I like the fact that somebody can take the recipe and take the ingredients and do it themselves, but it's a whole lot easier to be able to entertain when you have the products made for you.
Yes,
And one of the things that we're seeing is more manufacturers are seeing the value of being able to package their products with a almost ready-to-eat solution.
Right.
So, in having the module driver or plugin, which is specific to a control platform.
Yes, each of these would be specific to that control platform, and I think you then face the choice between very quick, but not necessarily delicious, ready-to-eat food, or quick and very wonderful, ready-to-eat food. So just to keep with that analogy, right? So now we're faced with, there are a lot of options in the market of people who might have created something for their specific project, and they're just sharing that resource out. But it's not necessarily something that's kept up to date. It's not something that's supported. It's not something that has been vetted with any of the different firmware that the control platforms or even the manufacturer may be putting out. So you want to really make sure that not only is the solution available in the marketplace, but it's available and supported. And I think that's an extra step to what we're seeing, is that not only is it available, but a lot of people are looking to identify the author of the plugin to make sure that it's a known, reputable brand.
So this explains a little bit about why some programmers like to do their own.
Yes.
Because they know that they have it, they own it, they know what it took to make it work.
Yeah.
And then there's some that have probably had some bad experiences.
Yeah. I think a lot of programmers have been burned by looking into the marketplace and seeing something available and like, okay, great, I don't have to do a ton of work to make this work. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case in that scenario. We hear that a lot. And our desire, our team, they've all programmed in the field, and they understand why it's such a nice thing and a project-saving thing to have modules, drivers, and plugins that are reliable. And so we hear very often how so many have looked and seen that we authored it, so they knew that they could trust that this is going to work. And then others out there, if it's not existent, they even reach out to us to see how we can help them make it exist. And so we want to make sure that you have solutions out there, you programmers, you have solutions out there that you can rely on, because we want you to be successful and not always be under the wire trying to get everything working without the tools you need.
Is there any, aside from looking at the author, is there any go-to recommendation? Is there anything that somebody can go by to say this is official or this is something that I know I can use with confidence?
Yeah. So not only do the platforms have their own certifications and rigorous processes to make sure that it's been tested and vetted, but Control Concepts also has their own badge. So we have our Control Concepts Supported Program seal, and that shows that not only is this manufacturer sponsored and the manufacturer is behind this development, but it's also backed and supported by our wonderful team at Control Concepts. And so if you run into a problem and you need assistance, you can pick up the phone, you can email us, you can reach out to us, and we're going to make sure we get it working for you.
That sounds like a lot of confidence to me. So let's talk about firmware and let's talk about those things that burn us. How does something like that get handled?
Yeah, so, firmware exists on either side of the chain. It's existing in the third-party manufacturer. It's existing on the control side. So we account for that in that we have partnered with these third-party manufacturers. They give us access to their firmware prior to release to the market. We make sure that we validate that through our support channels against what we've written to make sure it's working. If there's something that is not functioning, we get it addressed all before it hits the market. That's our goal and desire. That's why we work to be partners with our manufacturers. The same thing on the platform side. We don't necessarily always know when it's coming down, but as soon as we know, we make sure we get it validated through and we can address any concerns. A lot of times we have the communication with the platforms to really be ahead of knowing what's coming on their roadmap. We know what features and new functionality they're looking to add as they develop for their platforms. So we've really got that foresight to be able to think ahead and start planning for our partners.
Now, from a programmer standpoint, how can they help? Is there some way that they're either working with the manufacturer or running into a challenge? How can they help us help them?
Help us help them, yeah. So I think the biggest thing is if you're running into an issue with a manufacturer, if there's a manufacturer you really want to work with, but doesn't seem to have the tools you need or the tools that are available aren't necessarily working the way you require. One, I would let the manufacturer know and include us in the conversation. Bring us to the table. So reach out to that manufacturer and say, look, I really want to use your product, but I need Control Concepts to look at it and help us. I think you can always reach out to us. We're always happy to help. We not only do we work with the manufacturers to write these tools, we can also work for you. If the manufacturer is not able to get something written in time for your project, we can work with you to make sure we get something specifically for your project. We call those limited functionality. So, typically those can fall outside of the project budget because it's usually found out after the project's been sold that something's not working or needs written. So let us know. We're happy to help you out as much as we can. And let us know, even if it's not for a specific project, and we'll see. Maybe it's a partner we already work with. Maybe it's something we already have in production. It's just not complete yet. Or it opens up a new door for us and a new opportunity to be able to talk to another manufacturer and help make your projects more successful.
That sounds like and the nice part about that is that the programmers are not, most of the time, they don't have to incur any of the costs.
You're right.
So they get the benefit and don't have to incur
That's
the
what we
costs.
want. We really want everything to be available to the programmers as free as possible. It's really up to the manufacturers is how we like to look at it. It's the manufacturer's solution. But we hope that they're giving this to you as a way of saying we want you to make sure your project is successful. If your project is successful, our product is successful, Control Concepts is successful, and we all win.
Absolutely. Well, this is a great way of being able to put a bow around, I think, the whole concept, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about modules, drivers, and plugins, because a lot of times they have not always been successful. So there's hesitancy, and I think just understanding the value of them, and I think the manufacturers realizing that programmers appreciate them
Yes.
is really what's critical. And I think the conversations have changed, over the years, because we've talked about how programming is almost a bad thing, and we want no programming required, and we've talked on previous episodes of Ask the Programmer about programming and configuration, but these modules, drivers, and plugins, they're kind of essential to making any project work.
Yeah. They really get the project to a successful path. There are some larger teams out there that perhaps have an extensive programming team that they can be able to develop these on their own, but the reality is our industry is mostly made up of the smaller to mid-range size companies, and these companies can't afford to take on the lift of making everything work like this, and manufacturers have really come around to seeing that, and it's been a really exciting time here at ISE to see that light bulb moment with them.
Yeah, and to your point, if we were to quantify that a little bit, many times a module might be multiples of the effort it takes to do a project. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about a project, you're using that one specific functionality, but manufacturers are looking at about 80% of the functionality that would be needed across all of the other platforms. They're not just looking at one.
So the idea is that the programmer themselves, they really could focus on what the client needs and put the pieces together, modules included in that, and don't have to worry about the specifics of knowing how to talk to a particular product.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think the other aspect that we like to talk about is that this is one way of being able to say that this product is a little bit more cost-effective or more marketable because it has this added component and makes your projects easier.
Yeah, everyone can stand behind it. They know this is going to work in the end.
That's a good way of us wrapping this up. Yeah. So I appreciate your time, and
Absolutely.
Always great to have these conversations, and we'll do it again next year.
Hey, it seems to be the annual thing. So
and shout out to James. I hope that he'll be able to. He certainly will join us in our next regular recording, but hopefully he'll be able to join us live at InfoComm or another trade show that we're at. But until then, how could people get in touch with you, learn more about Control Concepts, and also anything else you wanted to share?
You can reach out to us at controlconcepts.net, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Britt Dice.
Wonderful. And for me, you could find me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. And as Brittany said, our company is a supporter of this podcast, and we build the building blocks that programmers need to make their projects more successful. So those can be found at controlconcepts.net. If you'd like to see this podcast, you can see us on YouTube, and if you'd like to hear us, you could hear us on your favorite podcast player. So we're in multiple places. We also have a LinkedIn group that we like to promote, and that is an Ask the Programmer community. So reach out and join us there, and that's where we can continue these conversations, and we can get in touch with the people that are on the show. And we are here for programmers, and we want to help to make sure that we are addressing the topics that programmers are looking for. So if you have questions or topics or would like to be a guest, please reach out to us. James could be reached at AV_James King, typically on social media as well, and he is also active on LinkedIn. And until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.